Hi everybody, I'm Sarah. I am a paediatric dietitian working at Luton and Dunstable Hospital NHS Trust. Okay, so now I'm going to just go through a typical baby that I might see on our neonatal unit. So I've named this baby G. It's a little boy that was born very, very early. He was born at 28 weeks and 6 days gestation. And what that means is that he was born 12 weeks earlier than he should have been. So a complete pregnancy would last for 40 weeks. So any infant that's born 37 weeks or below is classed as a premature infant. And we usually find that an infant that had gone to complete pregnancy, so 40 weeks, would weigh about 3 kilos. Give or take. This little baby G was born at 715 grams, so way less than a kilo. He was born very, very small. He was born very, very vulnerable and sick. He was also born with a heart conditioning which needed medical treatment, and his lungs weren't developed properly, which meant that he needed support with his breathing. So he had support with breathing via a machine. He also had underdeveloped bones, so we needed to support that growth and development of his bones with extra medication. So just to put all of this into context, I'd like to talk about what the significance of being born early is. Does it matter if an infant is born less than 37 weeks gestation? What impact does that have on his survival, on his long-term outcome? We can divide pregnancy into 3 stages: first, second, and third stage, or final stage. So this third stage of pregnancy, or the final stage of pregnancy, an awful lot happens. So this is a really critical period when the infant undergoes a lot of growth and development. So their brains grow rapidly during that third stage of pregnancy, and their organs grow and develop. So in particular, their guts and their lungs. And this is also a period when they lay down stores of muscle tissue, of fat, and they lay down stores of vitamins and minerals as well. So this is a really critical time for our infants. And when they miss this last stage of pregnancy, they're born with very limited stores. They're born with very immature organs, and they're born at a time where they're missing out on that brain growth. And what that means is that they have very, very high requirements in order to meet the needs to grow and development. So they have a very challenging time ahead. So what did we do with baby G? So as I've said before, these infants have very immature guts, and they're not able to have nutrition directly into their tummies. So we give them a special intravenous nutrition via a drip directly into their vein. And we start this on day 1 of life. It's really important because they have such little reserve that we give them nutrition within the first 8 hours of life to improve their chances of survival. So he had this special nutrition from day 1, and we built that up over 3 days. And so by the 3rd day, he was meeting his requirements that he needed to grow and development. It's also really important that even though they can't have their main source of nutrition into their tummy, we give them a really small amount of nutrition. And what that does is help to prime their guts. It helps to it helps to grow their guts and to mature. So the gold standard of any feed that we give to a preterm infant is always going to be mum's own milk or breast milk. So we support our mums in expressing a small amount of milk, and we give that on day 1. Often it's only 1 ml over the course of an hour, so really tiny amounts. So you may find that a little one only has 24 ml in 24-hour period, and we give that alongside the intravenous nutrition. And then over the next 20 days, we slowly decreased the amount of intravenous nutrition baby G was getting, and we increased the amount of mum's milk he was getting as his gut was starting to grow and develop. So the overall aim is to completely wean off intravenous nutrition onto milk feeds. And he achieved this by day 22. So by day 22, baby G achieved full volume of mum's milk. However, we're still not able to give this orally. So when they're born very small, they're born not able to suck or swallow. So we have to give mum's milk via a special feeding tube that goes into their tummy. So they get the nutrition into the tummy, but via a tube. And usually at this point, I know that he's been meeting requirements with his intravenous nutrition. So now I carry out a comprehensive nutrition assessment to see where we are, with what we're giving him. Are we giving him what he needs? Is he growing appropriately? So I do my assessment, and I can see that actually his growth isn't as good as we would like it to be. And when I calculate what's in his feed, he's not quite meeting his nutritional requirements. So what we do is we add in a special powder to mum's milk. And this adds in calories, it adds in protein for growth, and it adds in vitamins, minerals, and salts as well. So it's a tiny amount of powder that we add to mum's milk. And when I do the calculations again, having added the powder, he's starting to meet his requirements. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about how we assess our infants. And this is a really big part of my assessment. This is a growth chart. So this basically describes how our infants should grow. And it's a series, you can see there's a series of lines for weight, for head, and for length. Now we call these lines centiles. And what we do is we plot each measurement that we take for weight, for head, and for length, and we plot them on these lines. So we weigh the babies every day, and I generally plot once a week. We also measure their head circumference, and that's the line that you see for head. And what that tells us is it's an indicator for how their brains are growing. So that's really important for us to measure. And then we also measure how long they are. So what is their length? And that tells us about their skeletal growth, how they're actually growing, not just gaining weight. So all three measurements are really, really important. And in an ideal world, we want them to follow the line that they were born on, but often that doesn't happen. Or it could be that actually if growth was restricted in the womb, we should ignore what they were born on, and we want to just see an improvement on that centile. So you can see if we look at weight, that weight dropped a little bit, and that was around the time that we got onto full breast milk feeds for baby G, and before we started the fortifier. But once we started the fortifier, you can see that actually his weight started to improve, and he started to climb in centile position so that he was back to his birth centile. And you can see the same for head as well. So initially he went down on his centiles for his head circumference, but is now starting to go up. Length is really difficult to measure. So it sometimes is a bit difficult to interpret the length centile, but there is some improvement in that as well. So this is a really important part of my assessment, but other things that I would look at to assess is blood results. So when we look at the blood results, a lot of the results can tell us just about the nutrition that we're giving and what the stores are like for the infant. So I couldn't really do what I do without a big team around me, and everything I do is multidisciplinary. So the ward rounds, there's lots of people on the ward rounds. There's the nurses and a variety of doctors that I work with to make sure that we're looking at every aspect of care for these babies. I work very closely with an infant feeding coordinator, and their job is to support mums with establishing a supply of milk when we're giving it via tube, And then when they're able to have nutrition orally, they support mums with breastfeeding. And they're learning these skills, learning oral skills. So obviously, sometimes it's a slow process to develop breastfeeding, and so that support that they get from these infant feeding coordinators is really, really valuable. I work with physiotherapists and occupational therapists, and their role is to implement a variety of strategies to support each baby's development. And providing enough nutrition is going to aid their development. So that's where my role fits in with that. And I also work really closely with a speech and language therapist. So their role is to assess the safety of starting oral feeds. So they'll look at how they're sucking on a dummy, for example, so not on milk initially, and see what that suck is like. They'll take into account how much breathing support they need, because they can't often manage to suck, swallow and breathe at the same time. And if they can't coordinate all of those three things, then they're not safe to have oral feeds. So our speech and language therapist is really, really valuable on the unit, and I work very closely with them. And then all of these team members will not only support in the management of the infant while they're on the neonatal unit, but planning their discharge and potentially beyond as well. So a lot of the team that I work with will continue to review these infants once they're home. So what is the outcome for baby G? Well, he's had dietetic input throughout his inpatient stay, and I'm pleased to say that with careful calculation and monitoring, he's met his requirements for growth, and he's now starting to establish oral feeds. His growth chart is looking really good. And he's starting to climb up in terms of his centiles, and we know that that's going to impact on his ability to grow and develop. And getting enough nutrition is going to help his brain grow, his gut grow and mature, and it's also going to help his lungs mature, and it can facilitate his weaning from respiratory support. And we're seeing that he's starting to come down with the amount of support he needs. So actually all the things that we look at are looking really positive for baby G. And I am so pleased that I've been able to be a part of that journey for that baby and for that family, to support them. And I'm really hoping that this input and what I've done is going to impact on his outcome in his later life.